What do you see as the biggest challenges then in AI adoption?
80% answer there is just reticence. There's a lot of...
So really pleased to have Rusty Pickens all the way from the DC area in the States on the show today, founder of 580 Strategy. So we'll talk a bit about that in due course.
I would say fear and anxiety around it. How do we adopt these tools? I don't think tribes or tribal leaders just yet feel a high level of confidence that they have it fully under control. I think that's where we are, and that's part of what my team is trying to help solve. Is we've done a lot of this work already with just regular cloud computing that wasn't powered by AI.
Tell us about, is it 560 Strategies?
Company's 9-ish years old. A lot of it, government contracting also is not for the faint of heart, Matthew. You got to be really engaged in this, and it takes a long time. The contracting world, you need to build up work and you need to go tackle projects, and then they just kind of incrementally grow.
What is it about their operations and what is it about their need for IT and tech?
I think the best...
Hello and welcome to another edition of Behind the Numbers, the podcast that seeks the personalities in the technology industry. So before I dive in and speak to our very special guest today, I'd like to remind you that today's podcast is brought to you by Kinetic Core AI. They're a firm that help organizations grow revenue within 12 months. So if you're interested in a free growth consultancy, drop the word grow into the DMs and we'll take it from there. So really pleased to have Rusty Pickens all the way from the DC area in the States on the show today. He's a super busy man, so I won't go and try and unpack his whole history or what he's got on his plate because he can tell us that for sure. But really one of the key elements he's in at the moment is a company where he's the principal and founder of 580 Strategy. So we'll talk a bit about that in due course. But Rusty, really great to have you on the show today, certainly all the way from the States, and looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, this seems wonderful, Matthew. Good to meet you. Thanks for having me on and excited for a good conversation. Let's do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's have a little bit of a understanding of your background. Tell the listeners about a potted history, where you've come from, your journey, entrepreneurship, should I say, to this point, what's been going on. And then we've got plenty of threads that we can pull and talk about how that's sort of shaping what you're doing coming forward.
I'm originally from southeastern Oklahoma, formerly Indian Territory. Grew up in a little town called Ada in the heart of the Chickasaw Nation, and I'm an enrolled member of that tribe, the Chickasaw Nation. So I would characterize myself as a bona fide IT geek. So that's the one thing and best thing that I'm good at. And so I've been doing that for, almost 30 years now, which seems a little scary how quickly time flies. But I cut my teeth back there working for my tribe, doing enterprise IT, help desk kinds of work, was a network operations manager back in the early 2000s when it was all about wiring and switches and that kind of stuff, way before cloud. Graduated with my coding degree from East Central University as an undergrad, and then kind of got a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity just through fate to join our ambassador for the tribe on Capitol Hill. And so he was looking for interns to come to Washington and help with Indian affairs work for the legislative branch. And so he was having trouble finding young Chickasaws who were in a good position to tag out of Oklahoma and come. And so I raised my hand and said yes. And the next thing I know, August of 2007, I'm on a plane to DC, and I had transplanted and relocated there. So I worked for him about a year and a half. Got into politics as one does when you're in Washington. It's just sort of saturating everything that goes on there. And so was really fired up about this kind of feisty upstart candidate out of Illinois who had a funny name that nobody had heard of called Barack Obama, and was out waving signs and knocking on doors for him. And then the next thing I know, I'm moving to Pennsylvania to be his IT director for the state of Pennsylvania during the general election. And we won that election and earned the right to govern. And I moved back to DC, and I did a full 8 years with President Obama's team. Really modernizing technology would have been my lane. So I was a little bummed I wasn't able to focus on Indian affairs anymore, but it was always IT. Did that for 8 years and then looked around in 2017, January, and it's like, okay, we got to go. There's been another election. All the politicals have to leave. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You're summarily dismissed on the 20th of January. And so what am I going to do now? Keep doing the same thing I've always been doing. So I reformed an institution as a government contracting entity, now 580 Strategies. The 580 is my old area code for southeastern Oklahoma. And so we branded and incorporated in a little LLC, and now we do government contracting. But Matthew, it's always the same thing I've been doing for 20 years now. It's how do we help the government embrace cloud computing, now thinking about AI. How do we do that right and well for citizens and taxpayers? And whether those folks are citizens of the United States or citizens of a state or citizens of an Indian tribe, thinking about that from the public interest tech angle. And so company's 9 years old now, and I've learned a lot. And I would say entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart. Learned a lot
No.
of stuff. Trying to keep growing and doing good work where we can find good partners. So
Amazing. Well, what a backstory that is, and yeah, looking forward to getting stuck into some of that. So for the uninitiated, certainly people like who in the UK and other audiences who aren't in the US, tell us a bit about, you're talking about the tribe and the requirement for technology and software. What is it about their operations, and what is it about their need for IT and tech, and what are they doing that's driving that need?
I think the best place to start is a little understood topic that if you're not familiar about indigenous tribes or nations in that way, it's really important. So we're essentially dual citizens. We are citizens of the United States of America. It's funny, we're about to celebrate Independence Day from the UK, so there's a lot of feelings around all that. Those tribes were here. My tribe, the Chickasaw Nation, was from Mississippi and down around the Mississippi Delta area way back before the United States was even a twinkle in the founder's eyes, so we need to respect that. We were removed to Oklahoma in the 1830s under the Removal Act, but ability to govern ourselves, our government, our ability as a tribal community to self-determine existed long before the United States. And so it's had a rough history since all of this has unfolded. And I think we're all learning more about this together as we look back at that and how we can do a little better. But I'm a dual citizen of the Chickasaw Nation and the United States of America. And so from that angle, the IT systems, it's really fascinating. And certainly with AI, we have the right to self-determine how our communities deal with our own politics, our own services. We provide healthcare, housing, educational resources from the Chickasaw Nation out to our citizens. And so all of that IT infrastructure has to follow. And the interesting part is it shouldn't be owned or it shouldn't be subjected necessarily to the judicial system of the United States. So much like GDPR and some of these other things that we see in other international scenarios, the same thing applies for Indian country inside the United States. We are a domestic sovereign nation with the ability, inherent right to manage and govern ourselves, and the IT has to follow. So making sure that IT systems are owned by the tribe, making sure that they aren't subject to subpoena from other branches of government that may not have jurisdiction is really fascinating, kind of bleeding edge legal stuff out here that we're especially having to unpack now during AI. It was a little easier during the enterprise IT days. You could just buy and own and operate this equipment. But now, what if you have a cloud model that lives in the cloud somewhere else, maybe in another country, and that data is being scraped without acknowledgement from the tribe that you can use it? That's the kind of stuff that we're unpacking now. And my background is really deep in the United States federal system and applying that to Indian tribes and how do we think about those things. So they're both federal, they're just of vastly different sizes and scales.
Really fascinating, and I think yeah, like I said, the uninitiated people like myself, is really interesting to understand how that dynamic is working and the requirement for it. So that's fantastic. So yeah, let's talk a bit about the Barack Obama days, right? So that must have been quite an interesting. So tell us a bit about the type of work that you were doing, the type of outcomes you were looking to deliver for that office, and yeah, give us a sense of some of the things you were really proud of that you delivered during that time.
Yeah, sure. So, I guess the early days were campaign days, and so, gosh, it was a special time, Matthew. We were rolling off of George W. Bush 2. We were still embroiled in a war in Iraq, and that was really driving the urgency. And that's not even to speak of the economic fallout that started near the end of 2008. So, our whole coalition working to get President Obama elected just felt a fierce urgency. We just needed to get a hold of the country and move it in another direction. And that was a lot of hard work. It is not for the faint of heart. Campaigning is for an early 20-something kind of person. I don't think I could do that again these days, but long, long hours. And my job was to help get the technology in the campaign staff's hands to go win that election. And we did. We carried in Pennsylvania by 11 points that year. Really proud of that work. Really flexible. We were able to do our work from BlackBerrys and Wi-Fi hotspots and Starbucks coffee shops, and then we come into government after Inauguration Day, and it was like stepping 30 years back in time, Matthew. You couldn't work if you weren't in a big brutalist federal building in downtown Washington. There was no Citrix. There was no telework. You had to have a government issued BlackBerry if you were going to check your email. And that was it. That was the modern cloud, the modern technology apparatus, as it were. So that was quite a shock to us coming off of a really nimble campaign that was embracing cloud before we called it cloud, really. And then forced into this, you got to be in downtown DC in order to get any work done. So we started from there. that was surprising. It felt like a big step back. So much of the work that I was doing was just trying to shore up enterprise IT. Did my first 2.5 years at the U.S. Small Business Administration, just helping them modernize their technology. Kind of ran out of steam at the end of that after the economic recovery sort of turned around, and was looking for my next gig. Through campaign connections and folks at the White House, was able to apply for a junior project manager job and got it. And so tagged in the late 2011 timeframe, was handed a bunch of big projects to go work on. And my expertise and background, I think, really led to being helpful in that. Can you be a PM to help us modernize technology at the White House? Craziest, coolest gig I will ever have, Matthew, and you cannot plan for those things. It was a once in a lifetime kind of lightning strike of an opportunity to just say yes to. So one of my biggest projects that I love the most was I got to implement Salesforce for the White House. So how visible the White House is, it's not your typical government agency. You do what the president wants you to do, and the budget is really small. And so in that way, we can be very experimental. So they knew they needed cloud. The old correspondence management system that lets people write emails and letters to the president of the United States was just crumbling. It was about 4 years old, and it wasn't serving the purpose, and it was down for lots of times in the day. So I helped shepherd the replatforming onto Salesforce. We knew we needed industry-leading CRM to do case management. And so spent a long time getting that platform in, technology teams to go build it, setting up what we would now call agile software development to support that. So not only do you get a cloud platform, now you got to set it up to do what you need it to do. And so our first use case was the correspondence system for the White House. And we just sort of went from there. I got to build a center of excellence for multiple vendors. There was a little twinkle in my eye all the way along where we were building public engagement systems to invite people to the White House. So there was lots of constituency work. Let's invite veterans, let's invite tribal leaders, let's invite policymakers. They needed a system to manage that. Part of that system handled events. So just come to the White House and we're going to give you a briefing, and you'll get to be in these fancy conference rooms inside the White House campus, but you need to give us your security information. And so there was no secure way to do that. People were shuttling these things around in unencrypted spreadsheets, if you can believe it, for decades. And I saw the ability to connect all those dots of, can we securely capture that information through web form, pull it into Salesforce, encrypt it and redact it, and then send it on to the Secret Service and get you cleared to come into the campus. So that thing has now become the White House Appointment Center, and it's still living today. I think we're on our 4th or 5th president now afterwards, and I'm really proud of all that work. And it's got a foothold. And so when I take a step back and think about what does public interest technology mean to me, it's systems that endure like that. Don't just throw the baby out with the bathwater because there's a new president. Does the system work well, and is it serving the citizen? I think that's one of the truest measures is the thing you have built taking on a life of its own after you're no longer there and still serving taxpayers. And I hope, and I think the answer is yes on a couple of those things. So
Fantastic. So I'll ask you a question. I'll probably know the answer to this, but so it sounds like the delivery of the outcome for the public good is your motivating factor. That's what gets you out of bed at night. So whilst you're a pure technologist, it's actually that delivery and that ability to see an enduring benefit to the public is what gets you motivating, gets you out of bed in the morning.
Yeah, exactly. That has kind of been a thing that was ill-defined for a little while, Matthew. I think it's been fascinating to see this unfold. Like when the Obama team joined government, we just knew it needed to be modernized. And that's what we called it for a long time, was modernization or digital services. These days, and I had the ability to go back to grad school after my government service, it became this new thing that didn't have a name. It's all the same work, but now we would call that public interest technology. So how do you apply IT and IT policy in a way that benefits the public interest? And so that's what motivates me. And it's kind of a tough beat right now for the public interest technology side of the house, but we need to be building systems that serve the people who they're accountable to. The taxpayers of the United States of America, the taxpayers and citizens of the Chickasaw Nation. That's also taking on a new flavor. We've been calling it citizen or customer experience lately. And I think that's a thing we've adopted from industry. How do you write IT apps that, serve the customers you have? Well, in our case, on the government side, on public sector, they're citizens. They need to write a letter to the president. They need to submit their tax return. They need to file a veteran's claim. Elevating all of that in terms of experience, but also how do we build all these cloud computing systems together to make that experience nice is where I want to be living and working. And so when we start any project, the process that my company delivers, and there's many like me from the United States Digital Service and a lot of other companies, we think about from a human-centered design perspective, who's on the other end of that phone or keyboard. Is it a veteran? Is it a minority person applying for benefits? Is it an elder that needs Social Security? How do we make their experience work better? And if you do that right, politics dissolves away, big egos and personalities on the development side fall away. The ability to write code just kind of supports and aligns against that. And so I always try to start our work there. Who are we working for? Who are we serving? And frankly, I think it's a lot more fun. I haven't spent a lot of time in .com and industry, but I just really thrive on the public sector part. And there's so much good work we got to keep doing. So it's really been fun.
Excellent. Well, I can sense the enthusiasm by how you're talking about it, and it's what you're describing aligns. We in the podcast we speak to a lot of people from the private sector.
Yeah.
But the message is similar in that you don't just do technology for technology's sake. You've got a person, an individual at the other end, and are you really solving a problem, or are you making their experience of life better through that application of technology? And it certainly aligns in terms of what successful people in the market are delivering products that are solving problems. So what I'd like to just touch a little bit on Obama, right? As you've had sort of FaceTime, and I think depending on whatever, doesn't really matter what side of the sort of political dividing line you are, it's undoubtedly he's a highly charismatic individual. So tell us a bit about the purpose that you got behind, and and was that charisma and his vision something that when you were like working in that environment that got you on his side?
Yeah, absolutely. I just have such tremendous respect for him. I mean, we still call him the boss. I still feel like anytime he snaps his fingers or asks us to do anything, we come calling. Last week, we opened the Presidential Center in Chicago, and he invited all the alumni to come. And so when he needs us to do anything, that whole network just activates, and it feels like we're back in the 2007 days. But in a lot of ways, he was really unique, Matthew, and I'm not a historian. So, this is just my take on kind of living through that. But much of that was right place, right time. But he is also just the standard bearer for so much of what we wanted to do. He's very eloquent. He has such great rhetorical and oratory skills, and I spent so much of my time fully sold out into whatever he was talking through, So when he announced his candidacy in Springfield, Illinois, that was when the sort of spark started. You kind of need that. Like, I don't know from my background now, and certainly approaching 50 years old today, it's like, how do you sustain a movement like that over all this time? You got to be definitely sold out and committed to the cause that you're in for. And so a lot of those are just values and things that we should be appealing to and seeing and wanting out of our government that he just embodied. Like, we had a flawless 8 years. There were no scandals, no impeachments, nobody thrown in jail, nobody getting in trouble, over abuse of office. And now I think we've learned, and it sounds a little quaint, that that's not guaranteed. A lot
Yeah.
of that is baked into the character of the people that you elect. And we just tried to run our outfit like that every day. I remember briefings. And one of the very first things when you're briefed in at the White House is you get a meeting, as a group with the chief of staff. And Dennis McDonough then was our chief of staff, and he would just finger wag, you're doing all this above board, all by the books. These records belong to the citizens of the United States. We are stewards of the White House. Don't abuse it. And if you step out of line, you're going to be fired and you're never invited back into the family. And so that was just the way we ran the outfit. Everybody, thousands of people, do it above board. Remember who you serve, which is the citizen, and we're not in it for ourselves, So prohibitions on campaigning, ethics about stocks that you own, all that stuff was just baked into it. And we just, followed the lawyer's advice and kept ourselves out of trouble there. And I'm really proud of that track record. But there would be tough days too, Matthew. Like, we have so many. That kind of work is not for the faint of heart. It's once in a lifetime opportunity, tag out, go to work at the White House and the government. Looming over you every day that you only have a limited time here to do the best that you can with what you're given. And then you got to go, so it's not a 30-year career. This is maybe a 4 or 8 year thing at best. A lot of times it's a lot shorter than that. And we would have tough days, tough policy conversations, a lot of, mass shooting events. Those were some of our worst days. You just know that the policy needs to change, and the president's ready to sign a bill, and you cannot get it through Congress. I loved whenever the president would just go to the podium and start to make a speech, and you could just kind of see the entire apparatus stop and listen to him. Like, we always perked up, gave him our fullest attention, no matter if we need to be manning social media or websites or whatever we were working on. you would stop and listen to the boss, and he would just inspire us to do more and do better. So even if we felt like this is a tough day or I'm exhausted and I can't do this anymore, he would just spur you on to just dig a little deeper, do a little more. And we just tried to slide through the finish line in 2017, having done everything we could. And you look back at it and it's like, can you do everything? No, you can't accomplish it all. And he admitted this in a speech last week. You'll never get everything done that you want to as an administration. But if you put yourself back there with the information we had available at the time, I feel like we did the best possible job on the widest array of things. I don't know personally that if I'll ever find another one like him. I think he was my unicorn president, and so
Yeah.
that'll be behind me now. But those values, the ethics, the morals, the aspiring to be a better and more perfect union, we can keep doing that as America, and we owe it to the world to do a better job as that. And I think it's going to come back around. And I hope too that this shall pass, and we can be a good example of how you can do this stuff right and well, and be a good partner and a good country that's helping move things forward for positive change. So I'll get off my soapbox now.
That's wonderful. It's a really great description of what was going on and how you felt about that time and place for you. So I think that's wonderful. So yeah, Rusty, tell us a little bit about what's going on at the moment. Tell us about, is it 560 strategies and all the other things you've got, what's going on?
Yeah, so company's 9-ish years old. A lot of it, government contracting, also is not for the faint of heart, Matthew. So you gotta be really engaged in this, and it takes a long time. The contracting world, you need to build up work and you need to go tackle projects, and then they just kind of incrementally grow. And so we've been doing that for quite a while. I think we're at an interesting time because cloud is still in many ways needing to be properly adopted by the government. So that's where I spend a lot of my time thinking is it feels like agile software development is quaint and old, and it is for Silicon Valley, but it's not for the government. And so we spend a lot of time thinking about we can get you modern technology and we can give you a software development team that lets you account for change, which is the unlocker for government. Government really likes the agile approach. So combining those two things, that's the heart of where we live. We do it mostly on Salesforce. And then that's kind of the day job. Let's keep the bills paid, keep the lights on, so I'm building my team and we're going after more government contracts. We just rolled off a really wonderful 5-year engagement with Health and Human Services, helping them build a portal for data analytics. So you get interesting use cases like that you really get to sink your teeth to. Looking forward, and maybe you want to dig into this a little later more, but now, of course, the only thing anybody can talk about is AI. And so I've been spending a lot of time thinking about that at the nexus of Indian country. And so we're in a special formative time right now where the technology is outpacing government. It's just about to outrun everybody. So I'm thinking about this in terms of how do we slow down and unlike social media where it was move fast and break things,
Yeah.
I don't think we've got the luxury of doing that with AI and governments at this moment. So how do we get people to the table, study this thing properly, implement these tools in a way that's respectful and ethical? And been spending a lot of time thinking about that. We're working on sovereignty issues within Indian tribes. How do you protect your data? How do you stand up for your rights as an Indian community and not let, the chat GPTs of the world scrape your data without your at least approval and let them do that. But how do you partner with these platforms to do a better job
Yeah.
and raise the level of the experience for everybody there? And it's an unexplored territory. I think it's day by day. The news is happening so fast and it's hard to keep up with. It's also fascinating. So that's a lot of what we've been working on.
So you still highly engaged with your the tribe and native Indian community as well as sort of local or sort of federal government, is that right?
Yeah, definitely. We had a wonderful symposium in February. There was the Tribal Innovation Summit, and Cherokee Nation convened that back in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And we had a wonderful group. There was probably 60-ish CIOs and some industry folks and public interest technology people around. And it just left us hungry for more, Matthew. So that was a really wonderful event. Every tribe, every government, frankly, it's not just Indian tribes, is thinking and struggling and wrestling through how do we solve these problems. And so we had a wonderful 2 days there where we talked about the ethics of it and the availability of the vendors and how do you buy and procure this stuff properly, and then how do you implement it? How do you use it correctly? And so there's an interesting so in the United States, there's about 600-ish federally recognized Indian tribes, and they're all
Right.
different, small
Yeah.
tribes in some places with no budget, can't even get on the internet. Like it's really tough times. And then many larger tribes with gaming compacts and casino money and stuff like that. economically self-sufficient. So you've got some of those being leaders in the space, and I hope we'll see some data centers maybe owned by tribes and some language models that we're running, but we haven't quite gotten there yet. The overwhelming sense is there's a lot of hesitancy because nobody knows the way forward, and so trying to help think through, we can do this, and here's how. How do we connect these dots together for good security protections over this really precious data that lives with an Indian tribe and connecting that to cloud?
What do you see as the biggest challenges then in AI adoption within that community? Funding? Is it ambition? Is it reticence around what it's doing? Is it data protection and sovereignty? How?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that the 80% answer there is just reticence. There's a lot of, I would say, fear and anxiety around it. How do we adopt these tools? I don't think tribes or tribal leaders just yet feel a high level of confidence that they have it fully under control. The previous era of IT was we can own the data centers and the hard drives, and we can put them on property and inside the borders of our Indian community, and it's safe. I dealt with this a lot on the United States federal government, like the server hugger mentality. We want our data and we want it here, and we're not going to share it with anybody. And that is perfectly valid. Like, this is cultural data, healthcare data, educational data. These are the crown jewels of Indian tribes' data. It's a valuable asset. And if you improperly used it or didn't have the right controls in place, you could be exploited by these big technology companies. And so there's balancing that fear versus the desire to want to engage on this and really lean into it. And so I think that's where we are. And that's part of what my team is trying to help solve is we've done a lot of this work already with just regular cloud computing that wasn't powered by AI. We can do it as well for you, bringing those security controls into the middle of that. So use and leverage the cloud technology that's industry leading, that's really moving quickly, and protect your data at the same time. And I think giving people actionable plans to say, it's okay, you can adopt this and you can do it right and well, and here's how, is really what we need at this point. And I don't know that a lot of that exists. There's a lot of really smart people thinking about this, and we've kind of got our various pockets of procurement, AI policy, or these little different verticals, but I think we're having trouble pulling it all together to say, here is a framework or here's a way that you can approach and use this. And so I've been having my team spend a lot of time thinking about that. And we're going to keep working on it because I think there's going to be decades of this where we've got to pull it together, for all these different tribes. But by and far, the biggest takeaway is if Indian country will organize and get themselves together, they have agency in this conversation and they need to assert it. And some of them are, but I think we've got a long way to go. And so we just need to be unified, and we're a lot stronger together when we, kind of collectively bargain with tech companies, as it were, to make sure this stuff comes out on our terms. But at the moment, I can't really point to a lot of tribes and use cases that are just, using AI to scale in a really big way. There's a lot of hesitation. So I think we're going to get through it. I hope.
Yeah. Yeah, and no doubt under your stewardship and thought leadership that you will lead them in the right direction. So wonderful stuff. So final question, really, and we ask this to absolutely every guest, right? It's what one piece of advice would have you given the 18-year-old Rusty that would have stood him in good stead for his journey today? What do you know now, which you wish you knew when you were 18, which would have smoothed the path for you a little bit?
Oh gosh, that's a really big question, Matthew. I think for me personally, maybe this is just a thing of growing up in the South, but we are very deferential. We're very congenial. We want everybody to be happy. I think I would tell 18-year-old Rusty, be audacious. Like, there's nothing stopping you as a kid from rural southeastern Oklahoma from an Indian tribe working for the president of the United States. And like, I couldn't have planned that, Matthew. There's no way you can put all that together. It is just having people in your corner, having opportunities appear because you're in the right place, right time. But, luck is not by accident. Get yourself prepared and be ready to seize that opportunity when it comes. But had I known, again, how to join a campaign and how to join a place like the White House, I think you just got to know how to advocate for yourself. And I would do a lot of that a lot better. I would be more forceful about representing what I'm doing and what we're up to, because you sort of know in your bones, this is the right path. We're doing the right thing, especially with our administration. But there are tough days and there are people who oppose you, and there are big egos in the room who want it to be all about them. And so I would change a lot of that. I would try to remind us who we're working for and be really strong and vocal about, we can do this right and well and keep our values intact. And you can do that too at every step along your journey, So I wish somebody had grabbed me by the shoulders and said that a long time ago, because I think it would have changed the way that I approach some of these rooms. I'm sure you see this all the time. We're living through it right now with Pride Month. there are a lot of us that just carry some trauma there, minority communities and LGBT folks, and we just feel awkward taking up space in a room we're supposed to be in. And I would
Yeah.
change that. Like, you're
Mm.
supposed to be there. We have to have your voice there. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu, you know? And so we need people of diverse backgrounds and people from Indian tribes and people from disaffected minorities at the table making policy. And you absolutely belong there. And I think if you could make that mental switch, it would have probably changed a lot of the trajectory of some of my career.
Well, I don't think you've done bad today. It's been a wonderful story. It's been one, and that sage advice. I love what you just described there, and I think you're absolutely right on all of those points. So, Rusty, it's been an absolute pleasure. I could talk to you all day. You've just got so much knowledge. I've learned so much just from this short conversation, and yeah, I'm sure all the listeners that dialed in who aren't so au fait with the way that it works over in the States has taken a lot away from today. So, if anyone wants to find out more about you, your organizations, or what you're up to, where would they need to go?
Yeah, sure thing. Good question. So 580.digital is our company website. So you can go check that out. And if you need any help with Salesforce implementation, we're your team. We're also, all of our work on data sovereignty on the tribal side is the Open Sovereignty Lab. So Google that or go check it out, opensovereigntylab.org. That's just getting off the ground. That was an effort that started in February. So we need really smart folks, and we are willing to work with anybody because this is a really big challenge. So those are two ways you can get a hold of me, and happy to help anybody anytime. If you want to talk about Indian affairs, domestic politics in the US, or AI or cloud, I love that stuff. And of course, could talk to you all day about it, Matthew. So thank you so much.
Yeah, the passion exudes out of you. So it's wonderful to speak to someone so passionate and such a strong subject matter expertise on the matter as well. So wonderful. So many thanks for joining today. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and great. So if you like what you listened to today, please subscribe. And until next time, we'll see you then. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, Matthew. Bye bye.